and that's the first, as you would put it, probably real game of the season. But I think this is an important conversation to have, because I think this is where the pick process and the draft process that the networks have comes into play, and I think this is a good conversation into it. We're now in technically I think week 5, but it's the fourth Penn State game of the season. Penn State will play Oregon, rematch of the Big Ten championship game. Now, without, but also probably spoiling a further pick down the line, let's kind of go through the draft here a little bit. So we assume that Fox has the first 3 picks of the weekends for college football.
Right, which means they get to pick the weekend, and then later they will pick the game of the weekend that they want.
Right.
Yep.
So I think it's pretty obvious what are the first 2 picks in the quote unquote draft. It's always number one's always going to be the Ohio State Michigan game, just especially after last year and the gangbuster ratings that it did, and the consistently gangbusters rating that it always does. I think the next obvious one actually comes back in week 1, and that's when Texas goes to Ohio State, which is, I believe, a semifinal matchup, a repeat of the semifinals from last year. But also you have Texas, one of the largest brands in the South, maybe the number 2 biggest brand in the South, depending on who you ask, versus Ohio State. I would say the number 1 brand above the Mason-Dixon line in terms of college football. And then I think it's up for debate on what that third Fox pick is, and I think Penn State is involved in that pick regardless.
Yes, Penn State is the pick regardless.
Right.
Penn State is the pick regardless. It's either Ohio State, Penn State, or Oregon, Penn State.
And I just can't not see that pick going to the Penn State-Ohio State game with everything that's on the line there. How Fox has consistently picked that game. How there's not really the issue of time zone travel for the athletes, if we want to factor that in, although we kind of saw that point is a little bit moot after the UCLA game being at noon last year. I can't. I kind of sat down and was like, what are the reasons that Fox would pick this game over the Ohio State game? And I can't think of one, because I just don't think that Oregon is going to outdraw Ohio State in terms of with Penn State, assuming that Penn State's the secondary team there in either of those scenarios. Not that I think Ohio State or Penn State's probably going to outdraw Oregon TV wise.
Yeah, Penn State at Ohio State is getting a better number than Oregon at Penn State, even if it is the rematch of the Big Ten championship game. It just is. And their options, the options on either weekend, if those 2 games aren't the noon game, aren't super. But if you're Purdue, if you are Fox and you're looking at this weekend, the 27th, if you don't pick Oregon, Penn State, if you don't take that as one of your first 3, what's still left at this weekend is USC, what's going to be a decent Illinois team, and Indiana at Iowa, and Rutgers. I mean, you got 3 options at noon that you could plausibly sell, because Rutgers and Minnesota are going to be undefeated that early in the season unless they spit the bit. So I'll throw my cards on the table first and say Oregon at Penn State, September 27th. Not at noon, not on Fox for everybody who's worried about that. But it depends on where the networks fall, right? Because this is the game of the weekend. So this is the 4th biggest game of the year. So it's either 3:30 or 7:30 on whichever network lucks into it.
And I assume it's NBC. So I have 7:30 NBC.
And I would go with that too, because NBC, honestly, for all they've invested in stuff, if this game's on the board when it's time to pick, they're taking it, because they had a not so great schedule the first couple of years,
right?
Realistically,
and
this would be their first big game.
And I think ultimately, also they miss a lot of that. I think, or they got screwed a lot of that. And there's not a lot, when you look at the schedule this year, actually not that much attractive out there for the West Coast based teams, or maybe some of those in middle of the season kind of weekends that Fox is going to snatch up first. The second games on the tiers aren't as attractive as the first games. And I think you have to pick this game. And I think I will caveat it with, if CBS has the second pick, then it's going to go CBS. But I just can't I everything I know, everything I've seen doesn't make me believe, or makes me believe that the next pick after the third Fox pick is NBC, and then it's CBS as the
Okay.
following weekend.
Okay. So we both have 7:30 NBC.